a plausible theory to what the eclipse may be. And I'm going to try to share this as true to the creator of the video as possible. And I'll leave his link below. So here we can see an image of the eclipse, and they talk about how the eclipses have been predicted for thousands of years, the Chinese having it down to a science, and it just happens so fast. As it approaches it, it seems baffling that, again, there is no shadowing seen on the moon. It's like some black spot just rolls in and then moves out. And last time I saw this eclipse, I was working at the hospital that I worked at for 5 years, and we all went outside and looked at it, and I couldn't see the moon before, and I couldn't see it after. It just happened so fast, and I was so perplexed. Everything got really cold, and he talks about these predictions in an old book called The True System of the Universe by James Giuseppe. And this is very exciting because this is an old science, and we have to remember that NASA and all the stuff they feed us is very new science that disregards all of the wisdom of the past. And here we're zooming in a little closer, and come on, use your head. Any artist in school will learn to draw shadowing around a spherical object. This is not a normal spherical object. It would have a different shadow over here, and the shadow would change as it moved. And even as it sat fixed in this position, we would see a great amount of light. We would see some shadowing, and the darkest spot would be right here in the center, not the whole thing. And again, even when there's no eclipse, when the sun and moon are in the sky together, the shadow of the moon should change throughout the day. Here's a paper written in 1897 by Thomas Ferguson, and he foretells the eclipses so accurately, and this was done again by the Chinese thousands of years ago. And I've talked about how I believe the Chinese wisdom comes from the past great civilization that built this realm, that built it in a way that we don't and can't build today. The ancient Chinese wisdom encompasses everything, every science, sciences that we don't even know should be sciences in the West. And I'm just very excited how it always seems to come back to this. It seems to come back to the Yellow Emperor, who overnight brought all these sciences and wisdom to China, or Tartaria, as it was before China. And here was a perfect way to predict the eclipse that I'd never heard of, written by Sir Robert Ball in a book called The Story of the Heavens. And he said if we look at all the eclipses in a period of 18 or 19 years, we can predict with enough accuracy all future eclipses. It's only necessary to know that within 18 years and 11 days after an eclipse, a similar one will occur again. This is the rule that allowed ancient astronomers to predict eclipses. So simple. And the truth is always so much more simple than a lie. And I think you're going to be very excited when you see what this eclipse is. Samuel Robotham, in his book, wrote the simplest method of predicting a future eclipse is to take tables that have been formed over hundreds of years of careful observation, and any observer can make their own tables. If you collect the calendars of the last 40 years, the time of the eclipses, and each year, they can be organized into a table. After examining the table, the observer will soon realize that there are cycles of eclipses that are repeated. When reaching eclipse number 19 or 20, they will see that it's a repetition of the first eclipses on the table. So following this method will be very easy to predict similar future eclipses. A lunar eclipse is formed when the Earth is between the sun and the moon, is what they tell us. The Earth then casts a shadow on the moon, thus causing the eclipse. But this explanation has already been refuted by Frederick Henry Cook. In his book, The Terrestrial Plane, he writes, according to the new theory, the false one, a lunar eclipse occurs when the sun and Earth and moon are in a straight line. But it's documented that since the 15th century, more than 50 eclipses have occurred while both the sun and moon were still visible above the horizon. In other words, the sun and the moon were visible at the same time in the sky while the moon was eclipsed. And this is the kind of thing that just gave me goosebumps. While the moon was eclipsed, for example, on July 19th of 1750, In Paris, observers saw an eclipsed moon while the sun was clearly seen in the sky above the horizon. The same thing happened in the eclipses of April 20th in 1837. September 20th of 1700, June 16th of 1666, November 3rd of 1648, and July 17th of 1590. Also, a recent documented event occurred August 16th of 1989 in Hawaii, where the partially eclipsed moon could be seen rising while the sun was still setting. That means the sun, the earth, and the moon
Could
were
not
not
be
aligned
in
while the lunar
line.
eclipse occurred. So
There's
it's
no way.
impossible that the eclipse was caused by the Earth's shadow being projected onto the moon. Another thing they say is that the solar eclipse occurs when the moon stands between the Earth and the sun, the moon covering the exact circumference of the sun. This already improbable scenario is refuted by recordings where it can be seen that it's not the moon covering the sun during an eclipse, but rather something else, and we're going to have a look at that. On March 20th of 2015, a total eclipse of the sun took place, and the Travel Quest International Company organized a flight of 50 people to observe this phenomenon from the North Atlantic, and this is where the subject gets interesting. Several passengers filmed the totality of the eclipse, and the recordings show black orbs without light around the sun. And one of these orbs was covering the sun at the moment of the eclipse. Total solar eclipse, March 20th, 2015. And here we can see a nice view through the window, and this is what I wanted to see. Something real, and something nice and up there, not from our perspective. And here we go. Boom. Now they come into view. The orbs that I've spoken about seeing. Orbs that can actually move independently, but otherwise move as fixed stars. And I told you of the one that flew over my head and then just parked in its position and just appeared to be a star. And of course we have things we are told that orbit in opposition. And here's an example. Here's 4 of them moving in opposition. And what I find fascinating is if this is true, which I believe it is, it seems a lot more plausible than anything I've ever heard on the subject. That means that the stars, or at least some of them, may actually move in front of the sun. And it's certainly the case here with these 4+ orbs.